Two Idiots and a Dog, Idiots Unleashed.
It's time to think like an idiot.
That's just our default.
Yeah, well, this one was your idea.
Well, that sounds like something only an idiot would come up with.
Well, we are a couple of idiots.
Sorry, Legal Eagle.
Sorry.
I'm Grim.
I think I'm Zolgar. And Kaiju is romping around the backyard.
Just a quick warning, this is an uncensored podcast, so you may hear adult language or other content not suited for children, the workplace, church, or, frankly, human consumption.
As a second word of warning, we've actually not recorded anything in a little over a month because of me being on the road, so we might be a little out of sorts tonight.
And this week's topic might get a little spicier than normal.
But probably not as spicy as the tropes or gatekeeping episodes. We were in a mood those days.
Yeah, we were. I might end up in a mood as we go here, so fair warning.
This week our topic is Cyberpunk. It's not a how-to manual. This was actually submitted by Grim himself. If you have an idea for a topic for us, you can let us know on our Discord or social media, but you can only vote in the topic poll on Discord.
Now, stand back.
Because the idiots were unleashed a long time ago.
So, I'm going to start off by a couple of things here real quick on this topic. So yes, the topic is Cyberpunk. It's not a how-to manual. So this is a topic that I have brought up numerous times in social circles. Zolgar's already heard the mini rant before.
A few times. A few dozen times.
What can I say? It's a favorite. And this is going to wind up kind of being a little bit of social commentary as well as a commentary on the media itself. We thought about doing it this time because, well, we've had it on the back burner for a while and we're always kind of concerned it would be a little zesty.
Yeah, and especially with as close as this is coming off of tropes and gatekeeping, I was kind of a little hesitant on it, but it's really fitting on both the timing of its release and it's something we're both pretty able to talk about. And, well, just to get just a little bit peek behind the curtain here. As you know, I was on the road for almost an entire month. And I literally just got back today, as of recording this. And we have to upload this episode in 2 days. So we needed something we could do quickly and without a lot of brain power.
And nothing is quick or lacks brain power than me getting pissed off and yelling for a while.
Especially about Cyberpunk. And we mean the genre, not the video game.
Yeah, the timing element that he discussed is the fact that Cyberpunk Edgerunners came out earlier this month. And it's a really, really good show.
Yeah,
It has its flaws.
It definitely has its flaws. It's a strong cyberpunk anime that, honestly, it does not have as dark of an ending as I expected from a cyberpunk anime. Its ending is still dark, but it's that very fitting, beautiful dark ending. Not like, say, a Gantz ending.
Yeah, this is the first thing to remember in Cyberpunk, the franchise, not the genre, although it's somewhat true of the genre as well, is there are no happy endings. The best you can hope for is bittersweet.
It's pretty much true of the genre as a whole. There are very few cyberpunk stories that don't at least have an element of darkness to the ending.
The flavor of the ending lines up with most of the endings you can get in the video game pretty solidly. Most of the endings you see in stories, whether it's in the genre as a whole or within the specific Cyberpunk branded franchise.
Cyberpunk?
Yeah, shut up. Anyway, Cyberpunk.
It's not a how-to manual.
What do we mean by that? Well, simply put, society should have been taking warnings from Cyberpunk, not inspiration!
Okay, and now here's the funny thing. This is actually also something that the father of Cyberpunk says. If you are somehow not aware, the father of Cyberpunk is William Gibson. Took me a moment to remember his name. The author of what is widely believed to be the first Cyberpunk work, Neuromancer.
By the way, the fact that we had to both stop and think of Gibson tells you exactly how tired both of us are.
Especially because I've actually read Neuromancer.
Yeah, I have not, but I recognize it as the granddaddy of the genre.
Yeah, so Neuromancer, it doesn't have some of the elements of modern cyberpunk in as much. There's not nearly as much, like, cybernetic augmentation in it. There's elements of it, but it's a lot more subtle. And, I mean, the man described the fucking internet before the internet existed.
And then you've got one of the movies that really propelled some of the concepts into the cultural zeitgeist, Blade Runner. Now, we've discussed this before. Blade Runner is really more cyberpunk adjacent, but especially for the early themes and aesthetic.
Have we discussed that, or was that just in our test episode on Blade Runner?
That is a good question. I don't actually know at the moment.
So, if we haven't discussed this before, Blade Runner, when Grim and I discussed this, at least in the test episode, we came to the conclusion that Blade Runner, despite having a lot of the aesthetics and tropes of cyberpunk, isn't really a cyberpunk story. It's closer to being biopunk than cyberpunk.
Yeah, and it also leans more heavily into its noir roots than its cyberpunk roots.
Yeah.
Which isn't a bad thing, to be clear, but these are the reasons why we say it's more cyberpunk adjacent than cyberpunk. However, it did propel the themes, concepts, and especially aesthetic.
Yeah, the aesthetics choices in it are... So in terms of contents, Neuromancer created cyberpunk.
Yep.
In terms of what it looks like, it is Blade Runner.
Blade Runner, for sure.
And then another thing, that's a little bit more recent, that really started to show a little bit more of the weird side of cyberpunk. Well, there's a couple. In terms of major media, there's the movie Johnny Mnemonic, which I do believe was actually also based on a William Gibson story.
That's possible.
I'd have to double check that. And there is also this little known tabletop role-playing game. You may have heard of it. It's really niche and super unique. Shadowrun.
Shadowrun, and of course the original Cyberpunk tabletop game, which of course Shadowrun riffed off of.
Yeah. So Shadowrun, of course, is the one that blends cyberpunk with fantasy and really, really leaned into the body modding and some of the unique things you could do.
I mean, Cyberpunk always had Chrome, but Shadowrun got weird with it.
Yeah. And Shadowrun and Cyberpunk both really played with the idea of, and you see it in Edge Runners, the idea of hacking in the middle of combat, where you're in the middle of a firefight and you've got someone in the background who is hacking the augments of your enemies and making them short out, which is also terrifying if you think about it.
Yeah, and then in 2077, took a lot of those concepts and translated them into fast-paced gameplay very efficiently. Game has its problems, we're not going to get into that. So we've got this very vast, sprawling conglomerate of cyberpunk elements, and it's being donated to and built upon by each subsequent branch out, like any good genre does. Media in general, good media in general, grows as more people adopt it. And unfortunately, a few people have been taking the wrong lessons.
So, let's then break this down. What are some of the major aspects of cyberpunk as a thing, outside of things like the cybernetic augmentations?
Yeah. So we're talking the actual themes, not the aesthetics and the implementation.
Yeah.
And those themes are disenfranchised average Joe.
Dystopic society.
And the dystopic society, more often than not, is corporatocracy.
Yeah, which basically, by which we mean the government is corporations, typically mega corporations.
There's varying degrees of it. There is the for lack of a better term, realistic, we bought and paid for as senator corporate governments. And then there's just straight up, no, the corps are literally the government.
Which is what we see at least in Shadowrun.
Shadowrun, a little bit in Cyberpunk, less so in Night City, although Arasaka pretty much runs Night City. But theoretically, there is a civil government because they have a mayor. But, like, Arasaka calls the shots in Night City.
Yeah. It's worth noting that this is also the case in some things that aren't necessarily what you would normally call cyberpunk. You look at the Borderlands video game franchise.
Yeah.
Pandora is controlled by the companies.
Yeah, a lot of the planets are actually. You haven't gotten there in the franchise because you've barely dipped your toe in, but Atlas runs a totally not Coruscant, basically.
Okay, I'm going to say something here. I just started thinking about this.
Yeah.
Borderlands is cyberpunk.
Yeah. It's weird, out there, crazy, what the fuck cyberpunk.
Yeah, and what really throws it off from being cyberpunk, like that most people would think is cyberpunk, is it's bright, it's silly, it's fun.
So we've got, as you can see, cyberpunk as a genre has a lot of different flavors. But the main elements that we see coming up time and time again are, like we were discussing, corporatocracy, disenfranchised and disillusioned average Joe, dystopic society in general.
A major rift between the wealthy and the not so wealthy. Basically the utter elimination of the middle class.
Like, there has always been a little bit of a gap between the haves and the have-nots, but typically in Cyberpunk, that gap is a chasm.
Yeah, we're talking where you have your wealthy elite living in the lap of luxury and people who are working legitimate jobs and working... These are good, honest, hardworking people working quote-unquote real adult jobs, you know, the kind of things that you should be able to support yourself on in any concept, needing to resort to questionable means to get by.
I mean, let's take a step into Cyberpunk, the franchise, for a moment. Not to be confused with Cyberpunk, the genre. Listen, we didn't name the franchise, okay? Take it up with Mike Pondsmith.
Let's even go specific. Let's go edge runners. The main character's mom.
EMT. She should be making money.
And she has to resort to... I'm not going to say exactly what, because bit of spoiler, but you find out very early on that she resorts to questionable means to make enough money to keep her son in school and...
so he can go to a good school and make something of himself. That story starting to sound familiar?
And even the questionable means. So she's working a good job as an EMT, and she is doing things on the side to make extra money. They still can't make rent. They still don't have enough money to do laundry. They don't have enough money to do the proper upgrades for her son's equipment for school.
And...
does this sound familiar, my friends?
Oh, man. It gets even worse than that in some of this, though. Sticking to the same franchise, even in the same series, Ripper Docs. Don't let the name fool you. A Ripper Doc is literally a doctor. Most of them are a little shady, yes, but they are literally doctors. Because what they do is they rip you apart and put you back together. These are the guys you go to when you want to get chrome.
Cybernetic augmentations, if you're not familiar with the slang term, chromed.
Yeah, so if you want to get chromed or chipped or auged or whatever your personal choice is, you go to a Ripper Doc. And they not only rip you apart, but they keep you alive while they rip you apart so that they can put you back together. That is a level of medical expertise that is impressive. And most of the Ripper docs I've met are working out of fucking hovels. I mean, the dock that David goes to in Edge Runners, I wouldn't throw waste there.
That is not a sterile environment.
No. And yet, not only do their patients survive and make it out of there, they do so on immunosuppressants so that they won't reject their new augmentations. That's fucking impressive. And they're obviously not making good money because they're working out of these fucking shitholes.
Yeah. And anyway, another one that is, I mean, we basically take a page right out of this here in the US. You look at Trauma Team. Your basically your high-end EMTs don't even respond if you don't have insurance.
Yeah, if you don't have a plan with them, they don't show up. And even more fucked up is they're not just an EMT team. They're a combat EMT team because they have to be.
If you have the right plan, they will go into combat to recover you or what's left of you.
And by the way, if you think people that play the tabletop RPG have not abused the hell out of that, you are very mistaken. I know many teams whose sole tactic was get deep enough in to do the gig, and then let the guy who's got the trauma package get shot. Stand well clear of Trauma Team, and then go out the hole Trauma Team just made. We're not there yet, but I'm starting to wonder. Which is what brings us to the whole point of this episode, right? So let's take a look at a few things out there.
Well, let's start with the corporatocracy.
So, today I actually saw a really cool video from a YouTuber. We've mentioned him before, Bo. He released a good news on climate change video, stating that a major development has been reached, a major agreement, that is going to reduce a specific refrigerant that has been contributing to climate change, and an investment in new refrigerant technologies so that we can further move away from these harmful refrigerants. Refrigerant, for the few that either don't know or haven't figured it out from the word, is the stuff that makes your fridge and other similar cold-keeping systems cold.
So, like Freon.
Yeah, this was specifically HFCs. I do know what the full acronym stands for off the top of my head, but it's stuff that's been contributing to climate change for a while. Not quite as bad as the old CFCs, which were very, very bad, but not great either. And the main reason that this is passing through is because someone somewhere is going to make money off of it. That's it. That's the reason.
Yeah. At the end of the day, everything that happens is for money. By the way, I will try to remember to actually put a link to the video that Grim is talking about in our show notes.
So in order to reduce emissions that we know are contributing to the global death of us, not the planet. Let me be clear here. Climate change is not going to kill the planet. The planet will still be here. It's us who are screwed.
And even if we screw up the planet to the point where human life can't survive and most animal life can't survive, things will adapt. This planet will carry on, will develop life that adapts to the conditions that we leave it in, and it will keep going long after we're gone.
So we have an agreement to reduce something that we know is going to contribute to us as a species dying. Like, that is the ultimate in self-serving survival instinct, right? And the only reason it's happening is because someone somewhere realized, oh, I'm going to make money doing this. What the fuck?
And on the reverse side, do you know why we haven't advanced further on green energy?
There's no money in it.
Because, well, there's the comic that floats around where it's like, well, coal energy, we own the coal mines. Diesel energy, we own the diesel. Nuclear energy, we own the plutonium. Solar energy, we own the sun?
Yeah, good luck with that one.
And yes, I know that there are places where solar energy is not necessarily going to be the best option. There are places where wind or hydroelectric and etc. aren't always the best options. But we could focus on them so much more, and in the places where they really don't work, we augment them with well-made, well-maintained nuclear power plants.
Yeah. And this is another thing, a little bit of a tangent, but nuclear, when handled properly, I won't call it clean, but it's pretty close.
It's a lot better than the alternatives.
Yeah. For more information about that, I really advise checking out some of Kyle Hill's videos on YouTube about nuclear, because I don't want to get off too tangent on this. But seriously, go check him out.
Yeah, Grim likes to go off on that tangent.
All right, let's take a look at some of the others. So that's a little bit of the corporatocracy dystopic element right there. We are seeing a rise in some of the authoritarian elements as well under multiple governments across the world, but I don't want to dwell on that too hard because it's a little too hard a left turn down political road for this, and we're already getting pretty spicy.
Yeah, but there's definitely some heavy authoritarian government going on, and that is, we didn't mention earlier, but that is another very common aspect in the cyberpunk genre, is whether it is the government itself or it is the corporate security, but there is a very authoritarian and very guilty until proven innocent, and well, you're still guilty, we just couldn't prove it mentality.
For some of them, just straight up, we don't have to prove you're guilty, depending on which flavor of cyberpunk you're in that day. Again, we're not there yet, but we're starting to see there from here, and it's a little unnerving.
And it is there in some parts of the world.
This is true. I'm not going to name any names, but there is some unrest in a certain Middle Eastern country right now that is ugly.
There's also, that one really, really big country that's having way too much trouble with a much, much smaller country. Cough, 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 not naming names, but everyone knows who I'm talking about.
Yeah, I mean, if people weren't dying, it'd be fucking hilarious. Just how much of a shit show that is. Anyway, so we're not fully there, but we are rapidly approaching. We are on the turnpike.
Just like the corporatocracy, because we are not to the point where the corporations fully call the shots, especially not on a country scale.
But they definitely own some senators.
Yeah. And here's the thing. This is actually something that has happened in the past. There were company mining towns where the company owned the town, controlled all of the political, basically all of the politicians in that town. They made the rules. They had their own security.
They had their own people running things, their own store, their own security, their own money.
Most of the time, they owned all the houses, and you rented the house from the company.
Yep.
And remember, Elon Musk wants to do that on Mars.
Jeff Bezos wants to do that on Earth.
Yeah.
So, again, we're not there yet, but we're seeing it from here. Okay, disillusioned, disenfranchised populace. Hi,
we're millennials.
And if you think we're disillusioned and disenfranchised, talk to a Zoomer sometime.
Yeah, and also talk to Gen X. I mean, this has been something that's been going on, hell,
three generations now.
Honestly, to some extent, 4. Some of the younger boomers had it too. My parents are boomers, and I've talked to them about it, and it's a different disenfranchisement. It wasn't as bad back then.
And it's accelerating.
Yeah, it is accelerating.
I mean, we have a friend, I'm not going to name names because it's kind of a semi-personal matter, who is going in on a piece of property with some of his family and is completely flabbergasted because he never in a million years expected he would ever be in a position to do that. He never believed he would own property.
Even though in this instance, it's not him owning property. It is him being a co-owner on property.
That's the fact that he never once considered that a possibility is not an isolated incident.
Yeah, I am 38 years old. The only way I ever thought I would be able to own property is when there was the major crash in, what was it, like 2008 or something? Somewhere around there was a major crash, and there were massive fixer-upper homes that you could practically buy for a song. I mean, we're talking like $20,000 for a house.
Yeah. And that's just it. There are so many of us who the only way we think we can move forward is if there is some sort of major economic crash, and we manage to pick up some of the pieces before things get really bad.
Well, also, what's most of our retirement plans?
What's retirement?
The fall of civilization.
Yeah, I'll stop being an insurance agent when civilization completely collapses and I can, be a road warrior, I guess. That, by the way, is a joke. I won't be a road warrior. I'm too disabled for that shit. I'll probably get shot by somebody who wants to take whatever can of food I happen to scrounge up that day.
Or someone who just wants to eat you, because...
No. Listen, I'm way too fatty.
Also, what is the millennial healthcare plan?
Pop an Advil and hopes it goes away on its own.
Yeah.
There are so many of these dystopic elements of society that some of them are here already and some of them are fast approaching. And it genuinely feels like some of the people who are running things watched Cyberpunk or read Cyberpunk or played Cyberpunk and went, oh, hey, that's a good idea. And I'm here to tell you, no, it's not.
Yeah. So like we say, Cyberpunk, not a how-to manual.
It really isn't. All right, so we've talked a lot about cyberpunk elements and what we're seeing and how we're approaching them. Not to get too political on Maine over here, but I was thinking maybe we should end on some things we can do about it, or try to do about it.
Eat the rich?
I mean, that is one. Excuse me, I need to go wake up Madame Guillotine. For legal purposes, that is a joke. We are not advocating actual harm to anyone.
Also, I prefer yeet the rich.
The fuck is wrong with you?
We don't have the time for that.
So, the number one thing, and yes, this is a little political on Maine, but the number one thing you can do is vote. And I don't mean national. Yes, vote national. This rise in authoritarianism that we have seen, now again, not getting into too much of the specifics because we don't want to get too political, but the rise in authoritarianism on a global level did not start at a global level. These individuals, the people driving it, again, we're not going to name names, have been working at this for literally decades. And how did they start? Local. School board, mayor's office, license inspector, mineshaft inspector, whatever the fuck. They started with the local positions, got to county, got to state. Like, this is a process. So how do you counteract that? You vote in every fucking election you can.
And we're not going to say what party to vote for, mostly because fuck the parties.
Oh, God, yeah. I mean, there's a reason Washington said no parties.
There is, however, one party that is pushing us to the bad cyberpunk future faster than the other, at least here in the US. For our international listeners,
do your research.
Please do your research. And honestly, for our American listeners, do your research too. Do not listen to us for your political information. We are idiots. It says so in the name of this podcast.
And a dog. She's pretty politically savvy, actually, but she only answers and barks, so not that helpful.
But anyways, research the candidates more than just the party they are running for. And where you can, especially on local level, vote for the third parties. Vote for the ones who are independent or running under other tickets. At the large national scale, sometimes maybe it's best to
vote for the lesser evil.
I hate...
Bite the bullet. Just do it. I know it sucks.
I hate saying that, but yeah. At the end of the day, when you have one evil that's just sitting there, twiddling their thumbs and not doing shit, and the other evil that's actively trying to kill you, well, if you have to choose between those two evils, I think I know which evil you should go with.
In D&T terms, if you have a choice between dealing with a devil or a demon, deal with the devil. They have rules. There's other things, of course, that people can do that's less obviously political.
So there's actually one thing I want to bring up really quick, just because when you mentioned getting in on the school board, it made me think of it. Do you know one of the places where the authoritarian government really starts to rise? In the schools.
School system, administration, the classroom, teaching, etc.
And do you know one of the ways they do that? They remove books that challenge the message the government wants. And what have we been seeing a lot of happening in certain states lately?
It's always been an issue.
But there was the recent run of schools trying to ban the graphic novel Mouse. Which, if you're not familiar with Mouse, it is a graphic novel account of the author's parents' survival of concentration camps during the Holocaust. It is a brutal read, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, it really outlines a lot of lessons of history that, in a format that is both easier and harder to digest, like the easy digestion of the medium is really what makes it punch you in the throat.
Yeah.
I have not read through it all, but I have seen pages here and there. 1984 is banned in some schools.
Which I was
what the fuck?
I was honestly going to close this episode off with a comment of, also, 1984, it was not a how-to manual. But This is a good place to put that in.
Yeah. So, school boards, not to mention also the reinforcement of early nationalism. Rampant nationalism is itself a problem.
And especially because the nationalism we foster is blind nationalism.
Yeah.
The pride in your country, no matter what. The belief that your country is best and nothing can shake that.
Yeah, and if you think I'm full of crap, the Pledge of Allegiance. Oh, but freedom of speech. Yeah, okay. Tell the kids that try to not say it and then get punished for it. It happens every day.
And, of course, even if the kids don't get punished, they may get ostracized. They may feel like such outsiders because they refuse to say it.
Yeah, it should be a thing that is optional, and yet in many places it is not optional. And that is just one tiny aspect of blind nationalism that we're talking about. But that's where it starts, that little kernel. So, school boards is absolutely one of the first places they go for.
Another way you can help prevent these things from happening is you can, of course, if you have the financial means to, you can donate to especially your third-party political candidates or the political candidates whose stances you truly believe in, or you can work on their campaigns.
Yeah.
You can work with your local libraries. Local libraries are a bastion of knowledge.
There's several districts, jurisdictions, precincts, wards, parishes, whatever you want to call them, where some of they worm their way into the city council and they're trying to get books removed from the public library. And these librarians are just looking at them and going, no.
And you do not mess with librarians.
They are terrifying to behold, let me tell you. Terrifying and beautiful. But we've gone on a political tangent for a little bit now, right? What are some non-political things people can do? Well, here's a big one. Educate yourself. And I mean really educate yourself. I'm not saying school. I'm saying ask questions and then seek the answers to those questions. And once you have found the answer to your question, continue to seek the answer to your question. Because you need to get more than one answer before you can find the truth.
Yeah. And as much as you can, do not rely on biased sources. And unfortunately, all sources are biased.
And that's one of the biggest reasons why you need to shop around. I'm going to say something that's going to sound a little contradictory here. If there is a topic that you are not 100% clear on that's being covered in the news, here, especially here in America, what you do is you sit down and you watch MSNBC, And then you turn around and you watch Fox News.
No, not Fox News.
No. You gotta understand how they think.
They don't.
But the point is, you especially on something that's being politicized that probably shouldn't be. Pandemic. Sorry, I had something in my throat.
It might have been the COVID.
We're all gonna die. I got the Rona. You brought the Rona back. Good job.
Wouldn't be surprised.
But the point is, on something like that, you need to understand both sides. And if you hear, well, more than both sides, honestly, you need to also then go dig up some independent sources as well. And once you have it all together, if one of those sides sounds completely wackadoo, you might be starting to understand where the kernels of truth lay. And I'm not even going to say which source is probably going to wind up coming out wackadoo.
Fox News.
I mean, I didn't say it. But, even I watch a lot of Bo's videos. I mentioned him earlier. He is genuinely right and even on a lot of things, but one of the first things he says every time is fact check. As in, fact checked him. Do not trust him. One of his videos today alone, he was talking about, more accurate than the rest? Yeah. Right all the time? No. And then even referenced a different video he made that he made some very wrong assessments in. Cannot rely on single sources. You must educate yourself, multiple sources, read multiple books on a subject, read multiple articles on a subject, watch multiple reporting stories on a subject.
And just to go back to something here really quick, unfortunately, a lot of, we'll say, reputable news sites, in terms of their the websites, will charge you for access to articles, which that is actually another contributing factor to our issues with education and awareness of these things, because the ones that have a clear agenda, those are almost always free to watch or read. But the ones that are, not going to say unbiased, but less biased, those ones charge you.
And that's going to be the corporatocracies taking hold. And the thing to remember about that is there's always something for sale on the internet. So with one of them, that paywall, they're selling you the information, right? What about the ones with an agenda? What's for sale there? You are, buddy.
But as I was about to say, once again, libraries.
Mm-hmm.
Your local library probably gets newspapers from all over the country, at least the big ones. And it will have books. They may have access to articles digitally that you otherwise don't have access to.
Print magazines, they still exist, believe it or not.
They certainly do. And you can get those at your library, you can get those at your local used bookstore or new bookstore.
On a more personal level, you can also community build. Reach out to the people around you, talk to them, learn about them, learn what they can do.
That sounds scary.
I know, people are scary. But you can go, and it's basically you're building a local community network of people who either can do things or get things, and when the shit hits the fan, well, we need this. Oh, Bobby's got a couple down on the way. We'll go talk to him. Oh, Bobby needs some extra petrol. Oh, yeah. Let me go talk to Jimmy. And so on and so forth.
And you know where's a great place to organize these things? Your local library.
Amazing how that works.
This isn't just for the apocalypse scenario, the fall of government. You look at when Hurricane Katrina hit.
Mm-hmm.
You look at when natural disasters happen, people need help.
That flash freeze in Texas. A lot of the people that made it through because they came together and helped each other out.
And yeah, some of them had been doing prepping for some disaster, but the ones who actually successfully prepped, their prep wasn't a bunker full of bullets and beans.
Yeah, bullets and beans will only get you so far. And that's honestly probably a topic for another thing entirely, of your idea of the apocalypse is wrong.
So very, very wrong.
But it kind of builds in here because at its core, you want to know what cyberpunk is? It's a slow apocalypse happening in increments, actively around you. Like, society hasn't fully collapsed yet, but it's getting there. That's really what a good cyberpunk setting is, now that I think about it. The pre-apocalypse.
Yeah, it is the tail end of human civilization as we know it.
And ends definitely are scary.
Yeah. And there is one other thing you can do that if enough people do it, it's a really small thing, but it can help stave off the corporatocracy of the real world. Wherever you can, support local. Yeah. Shop at your local businesses. You know, maybe you're going to pay a little bit more, and believe me, I get it. Sometimes the difference between the price you pay at that little mom and pop grocery store and Walmart is the difference between affording food and not. I get that.
Been there.
Am there.
Yeah.
But at least for your luxuries, for your toys, for the things that are nice to have but you don't need them, try to shop local. Yeah, it's not as good. It's not as much as if you could cut out Walmart and Amazon and such entirely, but every little bit helps. And even if it doesn't stave off the corporatocracy, you're still supporting your local community more than if you're putting more money in Jeff Bezos' pocket.
Now, there's one final thing I want to recommend people to learn and to course correct, let's call it. And that is consume cyberpunk media. Take the lessons in and take the right lessons from it. Watch cyberpunk, read cyberpunk. Again, this is genre, not franchise. Play cyberpunk. Draw cyberpunk.
And also, listen to podcasts about it. Just, not hosted by a couple of idiots. We don't know what we're talking about.
Really don't. These media exist. A lot of these media exist. Cyberpunk exists as a cautionary tale in most cases. Take the lesson from that cautionary tale. Consume it. Digest it. Internalize it. Examine it. Examine it. Examine it. And then examine it. And then learn from it.
And then yeet the rich into the sun.
That's it for this week. If you like what we do, please give us a like, follow, rating, all that nonsense on your favorite podcatcher.
You can also support us on Patreon for special bonus content and episodes a week early, or tip us on Ko-fi. You can find those and our social media platforms and Discord server in the show notes.
Also, be sure to give our friends some love, whoever the fuck that's going to be.
How to describe telehell in 30 seconds? When I was alive, I stole cable. The electric shock from the cable box killed me. Now I'm stuck in hell reviewing the worst and the dumbest TV shows and moments of all time. And I'm gonna keep reviewing those shows until I find the one program that checks off all of Dante's 9 circles of hell.
Limbo, lust, gluttony, greed, wrath, heresy, violence, fraud, treachery.
Sounds easy, but it's not. Telehell, where TV meets torture. Look for us wherever you stream podcasts, and remember,
if it's not in telehell, it's not worth a damn.
What's a promo? Last, but certainly not least, we want to give a quick shout out to all of our supporters on Patreon and Ko-fi, especially these idiots.
Random Warrior, Rain, and the perpetually banned Athen.
You know what you did.